the hidden life of Mayan cities, and more welcome. Wherever you are tonight, perhaps beneath a soft blanket, or lying quietly in the still dark of your room, let your mind step away from now. Let the present dim, and let something far older take its place. Far to the south, where the forests grow thick and green, where the air hangs heavy with moisture and birdsong, a civilization once thrived. Mysterious, intricate, and deeply tied to the rhythms of sky and stone. This is not the story of bloody altars and sudden collapse, nor the thrilling chase of lost treasure. This is something gentler, more grounded, more human. Tonight, you are not an outsider, gazing at ruins through gaps in jungle vines. Tonight, you live within the world of the ancient Maya, not as a priest or king, but as someone quieter, simpler, woven into the fabric of a living city. We'll begin where every day once began, with the steady grind of stone on corn, the hush of morning rituals, and the beat of a distant drum.
The world comes to life before the sun. The forest stirs first, its leaves whispering in the breeze, its creatures waking with low calls and rustles. But deep within the Mayan city of Yaxchilan, the sounds are more human. You are awake. The woven mat beneath you creaks softly as you rise. Outside your simple house sits walls of plastered mud and woven cane. The air is warm, humid, with a hint of wood smoke lingering from last night's hearth. And then you hear it. THOOM ... THOOM ... THOOM ... A slow, pulsing beat from the heart of the city. The temple drum, it calls not just the priest, but time itself. Its rhythm aligns with the movement of Venus, the moon, the sacred calendar that governs when to sow, when to fast, when to burn incense, and speak the names of the dead. You slip outside. The sky is still gray-blue, a few faint stars clinging to their last moments. Your neighborhood is stirring. Women tending to the fire, children still curled against their mothers, men adjusting woven cloth around their waists before beginning the day's labor. Near your door, your grandmother is already kneeling over a metate, a flat stone with a smaller grinding stone in her hand. She crushes maize, rhythmically, patiently, turning yellow kernels into the masa that will feed the dead. You join her shoulders brushing, the rhythm passing from her arms to yours like a silent lesson. This is the heartbeat of your life. The smell of wet corn, of ash from yesterday's fire, of damp earth, still clinging to the woven floor mat. All of it feels familiar, endless, sacred, not far away. Others move toward the city's center, the towering stone temples that rise like mountains above the trees. Their steps are slow, measured. They walk in silence, bearing bowls of copal resin, bright feathers, and small offerings of food. The gods must be fed, just as you are. You follow them with your eyes. Even from here, you can see the shadows those temples cast, long, elegant streaks across the plaza. They change throughout the day, not randomly, but in ways your ancestors have tracked for generations. Those shadows mark solstices, equinoxes, moments when time turns inward or outward. At midday, the city becomes a song of heat and motion. Farmers leave to tend the milpas fields of maize and beans beyond the city's edge. Stonecutters chip away at new stealing, guided by scribes who mark divine names with careful precision. Children chased each other through narrow lanes, their laughter sharp and sudden.
You are still at the metate, now rolling dough into flat discs. Your hands work on instinct, pat, turn, pat again, while your mind drifts. You think of the stories told in the smokehouse last night, of gods who made men from corn, who tested them with darkness, with hunger, and with forgetting. And you wonder, how many of those stories are truly myth, and how many are simply remembered truths? Later, you'll visit the market, a shaded area filled with baskets of cacao beans. wicker cages of squawking turkeys, hand-woven cotton, and obsidian tools that glint like frozen water. But for now, you rise to take a break. Your house is simple, a thatched roof, low walls, sparse furniture, but it shelters you. And in a niche carved into the back wall sits a tiny clay figure, a household god with round eyes and a crooked mouth. You touch the figure lightly, then step back outside. A neighbor is sweeping the stone path with a bundle of leaves. Another is singing softly to a baby. And across the street, a young boy is staring up at the great temple again, just watching, as if waiting for it to move. The drum sounds again, but slower now. It means the ceremony is ending. For most, the day continues with quiet labor, shared meals, and slow, thoughtful rhythms. There is no rush here, only cycles. And reverence. You return to your seat beside the fire. The corn cakes are ready. Your grandmother places one in your hand without a word, and for a moment, you do not eat. You just sit, feeling the warmth of the stone beneath you, the steady pulse of your own breath, and the faint echo of drums, marking not time as we know it, but something deeper, older, a rhythm carved in stars and stone, the rhythm of your life. Now let us shift eastward to the valley of Copan. Nestled along the edges of what we now call Honduras, Copan is a city of sculpted elegance where stone seems almost to breathe. And here, in the shadow of its great staircases and open courts, dwells someone whose name you may never know, but whose work has endured longer than the kings he served. Imagine him now, a man seated cross-legged, beneath a low lintel carved with sacred symbols. He wears a tunic dyed with soft reds, his hair bound high atop his head, held in place with a slender jade pin. Before him lies a long strip of bark paper, coated with a thin white clay, his canvas. He dips a fine brush, made from agave fiber, into a black pigment thickened with soot and plant resin. And then he begins, a slow, meticulous movement. Each glyph he paints is a world unto itself, a cluster of curves, loops, dots, and occasional animal shapes. A jaguar's paw, the curl of a serpent, the open eye of a storm god. His task is not mere decoration. It is memory. He is a chib, a sacred scribe, part artist, part historian, part priest. He does not speak often. There is little need to. His world is made of quiet observation, of sunrise positions, of royal births, of omens and battles and divine anniversaries. Each morning, he kneels in the temple archive, where folded codices are kept in painted gourds or tucked within jaguar skin bundles. Some scrolls are hundreds of years old, others barely dry. He reads with slow reverence, his finger tracing across the glyphs as if confirming a heartbeat. Today, he is tasked with recording the accession of King Smoke Shell, a ruler newly crowned, blessed by incense and blood, the bones of his ancestors interred beneath the temple floor. But the scribe sees more than ceremony. He watches how the king hesitates just slightly before stepping up to the altar, how his voice trembles, almost imperceptibly, as he recites his divine lineage. And in his painted record, though he never says it plainly, he hints at this tension, perhaps in the way he tilts the glyph for lordship, just slightly off balance, or in the use of a rarely chosen verb that implies both to rule and to bear a burden. He has done this before. Hidden meaning, woven into language like threads of smoke. His role demands subtlety. Later, as the city quiets under the humid weight of dusk, the scribe returns home a small stone dwelling not far from the sculptor's quarters. He eats alone, boiled squash, a little maize porridge, and a clay cup of balsha, fermented drink of honey and bark. Outside, frogs begin to call from the riverbank. The sounds are thick and echoing. The scribe listens, then lights a small lamp, and unfurls the scroll once more. Tomorrow, he will work on the great staircase, that endless sequence of glyphs carved into stone steps, chronicling 2 centuries of kings. He has designed many of them himself. He thinks not of praise or future fame, only of accuracy, of truth, as best he can render it. Because to the Maya, writing is not just communication. It is ritual. It is breath turned to shape. The gods wrote the world into being. And in his quiet way, so does he. As the night deepens, he gazes toward the stars, the same stars he once learned to draw as tiny dots in ordered clusters. Venus is rising now, sharp and bright. He watches it for a long while, and then returns without rush to his scroll. Ink to paper, thought to form, a quiet man chronicling kings. Now we descend, not into a palace, nor a temple, but into the earth itself. Let your thoughts drift through the dense jungle canopy, through curtains of moss, and the echo of bird calls, to a clearing where the air hangs heavy and still. Before you yawns a circular void of vast sinkhole, framed by limestone walls, its water dark and motionless, like a mirror to another world. This is a cenote, a sacred well, a portal between life and death, between sky and the unseen world beneath. To the ancient Maya, cenotes were not just natural features. They were revered as mouths of the gods, as places where spirits gathered, and where offerings were made to ensure rain, fertility, and cosmic balance. The Yucatan Peninsula, where many of these cenotes lie, has no rivers on the surface. The land is porous, limestone soft, and water moves through it like a whisper, hidden from view. Cenotes were thus both lifelines and thresholds, sources of drinking water and of divine communion. Now, imagine yourself standing at the edge of one, perhaps near Chichen Itza, just before dawn. The mists have not yet lifted. Torches flicker in the pre-dawn gray. You hear the soft chants of priests in low tones, speaking to the gods of wind and rain, to Chak, the rain-bringer, whose breath fills the clouds, and whose anger brings drought. Nearby, a line of people waits. Some bring offerings, jade beads, obsidian blades, ceremonial pots filled with cacao. Others carry small wooden effigies, tiny woven dolls, bundles of feathers. These are cast into the cenote, one by one, each splash echoing upward from the darkness, faint and final. Sometimes those offerings were not objects. Sometimes they were people. The Maya, like many ancient cultures, believe deeply in reciprocity. What is taken must be given. To bring rain, to end famine, to ensure cosmic order, lives might be offered, often children, clothed in finery, anointed with fragrant resins. Yet even here, the tone is not savage. It is solemn, careful, wrapped in ritual, and understood as necessity, not cruelty. And science, in its slow unearthing, has confirmed these myths. Divers in the sacred cenote at Chichen Itza have recovered not only gold and carved jade, but bones of the young, and of animals too. Deer, birds, dogs. Offerings layered over centuries, their calcium fused with the minerals of the cenote itself. But cenotes were more than sacrificial sites. They were also places of astronomy, where priests watched the reflection of stars and marked the path of Venus as it shimmered across the water's surface. Some cenotes aligned perfectly with ceremonial buildings, as if city and cave, heaven and earth, were part of one grand geometry. Others were used for healing bathers emerging from the cool. Mineral-rich water felt closer to the gods, their bodies purified, their spirits calmed. And even today, in villages scattered across the Yucatan, people still speak of cenotes with reverence. They say they are alive homes of spirits, places where one must ask permission to enter, lest something unseen follows you home. There are stories of voices heard from the depths, of sudden floods after disrespect, of light that flickers for no reason. But in the hush of history, we are left not with fright, but with awe. Imagine now descending slowly into one of these cenotes. The air grows cooler. The scent turns earthy, damp, and sweet. You place your hand in the water. It is smooth, still, neither warm nor cold. You see your own reflection, blended with the stone walls, the vines above, and if you look closely perhaps with something older, watching from below, and then you close your eyes. Just the sound of dripping, the breath of stone, a world suspended, between the surface and something deeper. Let us now rise from the sacred waters and ascend once more not to a hut, nor to a market stall, but to the stone platform of power. High above the plaza, bathed in the golden light of late morning, stands the Ajah, the ruler, the mediator between the heavens and the earth. To the outside world, he is king, but to his people, he is more, a conduit, a living vessel for the will of the gods. Imagine him now, tall, poised, adorned in garments more symbolic than practical. His body is cloaked in jaguar pelts, his chest painted in cinnabar red, but it is his headdress that dominates a tower of woven green quetzal feathers, rising like a fan of wind-blown leaves, braced with gold, weighted with jade. The quetzal bird itself, sacred and elusive, lives deep in the cloud forests. To capture its feathers was not just an act of skill, but of spiritual pursuit. The bird was never harmed. Only its iridescent tail plumes were taken gifts, not trophies. And so, when the king wore his headdress, he wore the heavens, the sky, the forest, and the breath of the divine. Yet the king's life was not one of luxury. It was one of endless obligation. He must perform ceremonies, read celestial signs, appease gods through bloodletting, and bear the psychic weight of the universe's balance. His body, too, was a text, tattooed, scarred, and stretched by ritual. His ears, his tongue, even his genitals all could be pierced in rites of offering, not from sadism, but from the belief that his blood was the ink of the cosmos. And there were times when even visions were demanded. Through hallucinogenic substances, often derived from the seeds of morning glory, the skin of toads, or the bark of certain trees, the king and his priests would journey inward. They would sit in shadowed chambers, smoke curling like serpents, drums echoing the rhythm of a heartbeat. And there, in trance, they would meet ancestral spirits, commune with the gods, receive portents from the stars. It was said that time itself cowled be folded in these moments, that the king, through suffering and ecstasy, could travel back to the mythic age when the first humans were shaped from corn and the world was balanced on the backs of unseen deities. And so, from the great steps of the pyramid, he would speak, his voice amplified not by shouts, but by the silent weight of sacred authority. Behind him glyphs carved into stone, not just art, but language. Stories of his lineage, his deeds, his obligations fulfilled. And below, in the plaza, his people would gather, their heads bowed not in fear, but in reverence. They understood. His crown was not a prize, but a burden. If the rains failed, it was his fault. If enemies attacked, his blood must be spilled to restore order. The higher the crown, the heavier the soul beneath it. Even in his private moments, should such moments exist, the king remained a symbol. He dying not for pleasure, but for ritual. He did not laugh freely, for his mouth was reserved for prophecy. And at night, when the stars turned slowly above the jungle canopy, he would retire to chambers rich in incense and darkness, dreaming not of comfort, but of cycles of time, of sacrifice, of duty. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of the temple, watching him disappear into the stone passage behind the altar. You feel not fear, but an overwhelming stillness. A sense of being near someone who has stepped so far from the realm of the everyday that he no longer walks as others do. He does not belong to himself. He belongs to the sky, to the gods, to the rhythm of suns and seeds. And perhaps, in that moment, you understand why the headdress is so tall, not to rise above others, but to bear the weight of the stars. And now we gently step back from the misty temple steps, from the murmurs of maize fields, from the carved stones and the sacred waters. You've walked today not through myths, but through the subtle breath of real lives. You felt the hush before dawn as the grinding of corn welcomed the sun, and followed a scribe's hand as he traced the lives of kings into eternity. You stood in reverent silence beside the sacred cenotes, those shimmering windows into the underworld, and watched a king disappear into his trance not for glory, but for the burden of balance. All these lives, connected not by modern notions of wealth or conquest, but by cycles. Cycles of rain and drought, of planting and harvest, of birth, ritual, and return. Cycles that whispered through calendars, through drum beats, through the flicker of torchlight on stone. Even in their grandeur, the Maya knew humility, for to them the stars were not faraway lights, but timekeepers, guides, witnesses. As you rest now, perhaps there is comfort in this ancient rhythm, the sense that, like them, you are part of something slow, quiet, and vast, a turning wheel, a silent orbit. So allow your mind to drift, like incense smoke through the jungle canopy, settling into stillness. There is nothing more to do, no calendar to read, no offering to give, only breath, only quiet, and the soft rustle of a world long past carried gently into dreams. Good night, traveler. Sleep well.